All right, so this is one of my dumpster photos. I told you I love dumpsters. There's so many textures, colors, etc. on there. So this is just straight out of the camera, exactly how it looked. I haven't cropped it. I literally have done nothing to it. And this was just taken with a cell phone. So I've opened it up here in Adobe Photoshop. I'm gonna show you how to make the texture really pop. This is not gonna be for every single photo. Sometimes we really like that soft, glowy look. So you can kind of take what I'm doing and do the opposite of it if you want a soft look. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this. So to do that, make sure Window Layers is open. The shortcut key is Control J. J like John. Control J. J like John or Jennifer. Okay, that's going to make a duplicate layer. And then I'm going to go ahead and right click and say Convert to Smart Object. And you don't have to do this step, but if you do, it will allow you to go back in and keep tweaking your camera raw filter without it making a permanent change. So make sure you turn it into a smart object. You can tell it's a smart object because it has like this other little icon on it. So I'm gonna hit undo and I'm gonna right click, convert to smart object, just so you can see it again. All right, now I'm gonna go up here to filter and then I'm gonna go to camera raw filter. And when I'm in camera raw filter, I can do all sorts of stuff like play with the white balance. I'm not here to show you all the things in camera raw. I do want to quick, right here, you've got your white balance slider. I think I'm going to push this a little bit more to the blue and, play with this slider. Do you want this a little bit greener? Do you want it a little bit more to the, this direction? And I'll keep that there. Okay. Exposure. That's another one. This was a cell phone picture, so I didn't have any control over the exposure. Just I kind of did what it did. I'm going to drop the exposure down slightly just because I think it'll saturate my colors a little bit more. And then one thing that's going to make texture pop is if you have contrast. So you can play with your contrast slider. Highlights, play with the slider so you can see what it does. It's not impacting a lot in my picture here. Shadows, I don't need to bring up my shadows in this picture, but if you did, there's a slider for that. Blacks, that's another slider that sometimes dropping that down, whoops, there we go. Dropping that down, you can see that's just gonna darken the parts of my image. And again, that's gonna effectively raise the contrast for my image. So you don't need all of these sliders. It's gonna be dependent on your photo, but this is the real ones that I wanted to show you about here, right here, texture, clarity, and dehaze. So again, not for every single picture, but the texture slider is going to bring out texture. So I'm gonna just knock this up really high, just, to be obvious here on the projector. But you can see that texture slider is really picking out the edges and really finding all those textures. Clarity is another slider. Okay, dehaze I don't need to use in this scenario, but that's like good if you have something kind of backlit where there's like a lot of sun and it's kind of like low contrast in the front. The dehaze filter will work pretty well for that, okay? And when you're happy with it, you can say okay. And now I can click my eyeball on and off and I can see before and after. Wow, that really made the texture pop, right? So let me show you again with those filters. I'm gonna throw this away and start from scratch. Control J to duplicate, right click, convert to smart object, filter, camera raw filter. It takes a moment to open the camera raw filter. Apologies for the wait time. I'm just tweaking my white balance a little bit, and white balance is often pretty subjective, especially for something like this where there's not, what color is it really supposed to be? So just push it whatever direction you want it. In this case, I want to really pop my blues. I'm bringing my exposure down just a smidge, bringing my contrast up. I'm not going to play with my shadows. I am going to make my darks, my black a little bit darker. And then it's my texture slider here, my clarity slider. And you can also, I didn't talk about this before, but you can play with your saturation slider if you want to really pop the colors. Conversely, if you want to desaturate, you can go to the left. Okay, so let's say I have really saturated this. And then I'm looking at it later and I'm like, I go away and I come back tomorrow and I'm like, oh, that is way too saturated. Because I made this a smart object, I can go ahead and double click here and get back into this filter. Oops, I need to click here. My camera raw filter. And if I double click, it will reopen it and allow me to go back and say, you know what, that was not a good choice. Or I was editing on one screen that, you know, the color was kind of off. You know what, never mind, I think I don't want to saturate it. And I can bring that back down again. Okay? Or maybe, you know, a few days from now I decide, you know what, I just want this to be a black and white image. I don't want any color in it at all. Of course, you can do your little adjustment layer icon and get to that there. But maybe, you know, you really want to bring it down here a little bit more. Okay. So the point is, if you've created a smart object, you can continue to go back and forth in this filter. Okay, let me show you if I never opened that and I went here into my camera raw filter, and I'm not going to go through all the things. I'll just do one edit. Okay, let's say I've really knocked my texture up and my saturation. Okay, and then I decide later, I don't like this at all. I can't go back. There's like no, you know, it's just there. I'd have to restart. Okay, so you want to turn things into a smart object first, so that way you can go back and continually double click on that filter and tweak it. And of course, the camera raw filter includes lots of things that you can do with the regular adjustment layers. You know, maybe I don't know, I kind of did like it. Maybe I do want to saturate it. Okay, but I can go back and forth forever, right? I can go back and forth forever, as long as I save this as a PSD Photoshop document. Okay, don't forget about all your adjustment layers here as well. You can still use those and stack those on there. But I did want to show you that camera raw filter, because there's nothing here in the adjustment layer menu that is really like the texture and clarity sliders. And I think those can be really useful for the macro if you're trying to bring out textures. Okay.